Bonjour, cocksuckers!
We busted out the panda hoodie for this one. This is gonna be a good review, I can feel it in my bones, boys. This will be a shorter review because this is not a book I feel equipped to talk at length about at all. That's not like a downgrade to the book, but I am not capable of it. So I've had not only a couple of YouTube comments, but one or two of my friends who read the book are telling me to review Standing Heavy by GauZ. GauZ? One word author, always good. I think the reason that I was meant to review it is because I think I was meant to think it's a piece of shit, because the comments that I got it for were underneath the Gospel According to the New World review, and I get the comparison to that, but I think the Gospel According to the New World is just a piece of shit from an author who's given up, and this book is from an author who feels like he's just getting fucking started. How the fuck do I explain what this book is about? So Standing Heavy is about some security guards. Bro, I don't even know where to start with this fucking thing. Standing Heavy is a book about Ossiri and Kassoum, who are undocumented immigrants, and they come to work in France as security guards before 9/11 and after 9/11, and then they split, and in the meantime you get some like really long-winded descriptions of what it's like to be a security guard in kind of an Annie Ernaux style, from the perspective of, I think, one of the security guards in like the 2010s, and then every now and again we're flashing back to see the history of what it was like when they first got there, and the like kind of immediate sort of culture shock of it. So I think I like this book. I liked it more than about half of the long list so far, but it's really hard for me to kind of crystallize what it's about or what's good about it, really. It's just kind of a feeling. It's really hard to explain, but I'll do my best. So the book is lined with unbelievably long descriptions of the main character in a shopping mall and working as a security guard, and he just describes the things that are happening around him. And he works at Sephora at one point, and he just goes, wow, this bitch bought perfume, that's pretty crazy. And he does all that kind of stuff, and he's more just kind of meditating. And then every now and again we flash back. And those long, irrelevant descriptions were reminding me aggressively of American Psycho, the book at least. And I found the structure of this similarly kind of postmodern. But what I was reminded of more than anything with those picks was another book on the long list, Ninth Building. Ninth Building also uses these kind of disparate vignettes to tell a story, and both of them are using it for a different purpose. Both of the authors are using it for different reasons, but I found that the use of it here clearly had a point to it. It's just a lot harder for me in this case to like kind of get what the point was. It was very tough. I think it's being used in that sense to show the assault on the senses that has happened to these characters as they come from, I believe, the Ivory Coast to France, and they just get this assault on the senses from consumerism and kind of French mall life. And I think that was definitely part of it, is that you just get these long lists of the stores around him, you get long lists of the perfumes that are in the store that he's buying, you see every type of person, you get snippets of their sort of bland conversations, and the point of that would be to show what consumerism is like to someone who's kind of never been in it. And I think that was what the point was, but the book is so clearly personal and doesn't elaborate on that until maybe the end, that was just totally unclear. A lot of the focuses of the book are unclear, even though I love the book in theory. Yeah, the book just being endless lists of perfume brands and store chains is the same as Patrick Bateman's like endless lists of restaurants and clothing brands. It's the same kind of like attempt. There's a similar kind of message there, but American Psycho is a lot clearer in that, and the message is a lot funnier, if we're being honest. And then this book was unclear and honestly kind of unfunny. A lot of these descriptions of consumerism are combined with something that's like raw and cruel. There's a description of hair extensions that turns into a discussion about like crude oil and how it's ruining the planet to make these hair extensions. There's a discussion of how a percentage sign looks like a cock and balls to arouse women who always shop there. Shit like that, that's just really weird. Like, it's just a weird thing to say, but there is a point to it. I just don't know what the point is. I will say though that despite my kind of confusion over the premise and the like point of the book, the translator is off his fucking nut on this. He uses crazy words in this that I would never think of using, and it's clear that the fucking unity of the author and translator in this are like second to none. The words atavistic, callipygian, Micturian, and what are some other ones? Corollaries. These are all used from the perspective of a fucking security guard. That's absurd. Like, I love it. I love it. It's totally bonkers. There's like an evocation of the author style that is really hard to explain, but it comes across as part of the humor in the word choices. It makes the author seem like this very sort of kind of logophilic, very intelligent person who's also highly satirical. And he's using these words in a way to kind of show how silly society is. He's using these words to make society seem more complicated. It's really, really hard to explain. Here's an example. Here's a good example quote describing a drunk-ass bitch. This girl was clearly a descendant of the white tribe from the glacial Great North, those who routinely pillaged the more southerly shores of Europe, spreading terror, chaos, and spermatozoa. Okay, so using the word spermatozoa there, and not just cum, is a very distinct choice. There's a meaning to it, and it's satirical in nature, and it's meant to be funny that he's used this weird, specific, overly eloquent word to describe cum. It's so hard to explain the point of that. But there is a point there, I'm so sure of it. This review is a fucking mess. The point of the book is nestled in between these kind of meaningless non sequiturs that read a little bit like Annie Ernaux's Exteriors, which I reviewed in a different video. They read very similarly, and the point is clearly in there, but again, I don't have enough sort of social context, and I'm not the author. If I'm not the author and the author refuses to give me that any kind of like leg room, then I'm just not gonna get it. But I can admire the attempt. I can admire how kind of experimental this is and how little it's trying to give away. I admire that a little bit, but you kind of get clues as to what the book is meaning. Here's a couple of quotes that I took. Why should such children give a damn about French soil when their own soil, the land of their ancestral spirits, is still in the hands of the French and their African puppets? And I think the word puppets there is really important and gets to what the book is talking about at the heart with the kind of role of security guards and the kind of combination of that with immigrants and newer people defending their country. There is a point there. When he followed Ossiri, Kassoum did things he had never imagined. In 4 weeks he saw more places, understood more culture, met more people, learned more things than he had in 4 years living in France, holed up at the RSCI. In 4 weeks, Kassoum came to realize that he was not simply abroad, he had traveled. Ossiri showed him that he was living in another culture, another world, one filled with beauty and ugliness, with yawning chasms and Himalayan peaks, like everywhere else. So yeah, I thought that was a particularly good quote as well. And I do get the feeling that the book is about culture shock, and it is about the way that you process a totally new environment. And this is a new environment for France as well, immediately after 9/11, and I will get to the discussion of 9/11 because that was the best part of the book, but it comes way too late. Yeah, I thought that was really great. The point there was just so hidden, but I would have liked a little more kind of general traditional narrative context or sort of thematic meditation in a broader sense to kind of glean that out and make it more obvious to me, because there's some stuff in this book that I really fucking love, but it is absolutely disguised. Now, having given all this praise, I do think that the criticism that other people give to this is justified in that some of the book is a little bit cringe. Some of the stuff in this book that's meant to be funny is really not funny and rubbed me the wrong way, and I have adored listening to other reviews of people just getting really pissed off about how unfunny it is, and I agree that a lot of it is unfunny, but I don't take that away from the core of the book, I think. I wasn't really laughing like, haha, yes, people in Sephora are shallow. Very funny, GauZ, if that's your real name, you're very good. That's a knee slapper. That's a fucker. But I did feel like there was a point to it. The past sections that aren't the security guard stuff are so belabored with like historical details and place names that it was really dense and hard to follow. And that was clearly the stuff that I was meant to be paying attention to, but I was just like, fuck this. And then the security guard stuff was like, haha, this looks like a penis. The obelisk on the Place de la Concorde is the hard cock, the Arc de Triomphe is the asshole, and the Champs-Élysées is the erogenous perineal zone that connects the two. First of all, you can just say gooch, alright? You can just say gooch. With all these ramrod soldiers and titillated politicians, it is safe to say that today is the day the Republic tosses itself off. Like, that was monumentally cringe. There's a style of funny writing that I identify with laziness, and I know this because this is how I used to write as a child when I was trying to write funny, and that is either the connection of people to animals, or the use of really long-winded words in a kind of satirical way to kind of take away the dramatic tension of a scene. When you add in a weird word that isn't meant to be there but is like overly descriptive, you're enforcing the narrative voice in a way. You're kind of putting in the fact that this is a book and you are reading it from the perspective of an author, because when they use these really long words, it's apparent that that is not a word that would appear in that situation in any kind of normal way. It's not something a character would say, it's not something that would be written anywhere. So when you use a really weird long word, you're putting it as a satire because you are putting your characters under a microscope, because you are making it more obvious that the author voice is there. Did that make sense? I think I explained that really fucking well. The book does that well enough though, and not to the point where I was like, aha, funny, kind of laughing in the Eton way, like, ah ha ha, yes, you used a weird word. Very well done, Mr. Wilde, very good. But every now and again, there was a moment where that annoyed me. There's a description of two security guards and it turns into a dialogue, and he addresses the dialogue, the author addresses the dialogue as between Mega Sapiens 1 and 2, and I went, that was a bit cringe, you didn't have to do that. Like, what was the point of that? And again, that's also connecting it to animals, but it wasn't so often where I was cringing. It was only occasionally. But the times where I did cringe were like, oh wow, fuck, that is, like it was a guttural reaction out of me. The use of maths and equations in this book needed to be a little more fleshed out and be more of a recurring device, because those points really felt like the author was explaining some shit to you. Kind of like how Lars von Trier explains some really dumb fucking philosophical concept by just having one of his characters explain it in his movies, like long-windedly, in a way that doesn't make any sense and doesn't fit with the character. And it felt like this was doing a little bit when a security guard is talking about fucking equations that he's made up. And I was like, no. Like, I like the paragraph where he talks about the combination between skin pigmentation and the geography of the person and the social status, and how that's a relative equation, but that needed to be a recurring device. That couldn't just be something that happened like twice, because it's a weird thing for someone to say. And it, again, comes across more like the author is imposing himself really aggressively. And I think that's the main issue that people are having with the book, and that's why people find it cringe, is because the way the humor comes is from the sort of totalitarian establishment of the author voice over the characters. And that comes in the funny ways of using weird words or weird concepts like equations that don't fit with characters. I think that's why it's cringe. But I had no real issue with that, because it's a, you know, a satirist. But I do wish that the goal was clearer, and I wish that it had more focus, definitely. But the best part of the book is the very ending of the book, which is where 9/11 comes into play, and that's where the more social historical side of the book appears, where it hadn't beforehand. And I thought all of that stuff, the last 30 or 40 pages, were really fucking good. There isn't enough of that meat, though, around the postmodernist bone to really to really make that feel like it was earned. But yeah, fuck, the ending bit where he's describing the immediate sort of like onslaught of 9/11, and he uses the same narrative styles that he's been using before to describe all the different television screens showing it, all the different broadcasts, and it's the same kind of like aggressive list view that you've seen from the security guard talking about Sephora and shit like that. I like that comparison, and then I loved the ending. I loved the very ending of the book where he ushers through a woman who could have a bomb because it's his last day and he's gonna move on. That's not really important in a plot sense. It was just, I really liked that was the way the book ended. That was not only incredibly dense, but it felt a lot more mature than the rest of the book beforehand. Obviously, after 9/11, security ramps up and you need more people as security guards, and it made sense to have that in the book. And also because it was clearly something that happened to the author, so that wasn't necessarily just a narrative device. That felt quite personal, that he was seeing 9/11 the way he was, and then was reacting to it the way he was. But yeah, I wanted to see that cultural shift more, and I would have loved to have seen it in the same dynamic that GauZ uses to just describe Sephora people. Like, I would have loved to see that before and after 9/11, but it's just kind of like, he just kind of puts it at the beginning. There is a lot more meat that could be taken out of the premise, and the author doesn't do that, and I resent him a little bit for that. All in all, the book's alright. It's alright, but I would much rather be reading Ninth Building or Exteriors instead of this. Those books are more obvious in their thematic goals. I like what it's doing more. This book was really unfocused because it had to be satirical and because the author voice was incredibly, like, aggressively strong. But I can say that it has a really, really good translation, and it's clearly written by, like, a logophile who's put a lot of thought into it and tried to make it personal. And all in all, the book didn't, like, annoy me. It was way too short to annoy me, and I was enjoying trying to pick apart and trying to get something out of it. So I think I'll give it, like, a 6 out of 10. Just kind of a solid 6 out of 10. I don't know which one it's closer to out of a 5 or a 7. I think it's just a 6. But again, that makes it better than half of this fucking long list, so good job, GauZ. France does it again. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Don't worry about the dried blood on my hoodie. I had a nosebleed last night. I didn't get into a fight with any security guards. Your Honor, gentlemen of the jury.